Show tunes with lyrics where skill never wobbles. No wrong emphasis on errant syllables. Lively discussions of songs, queens and kings. This is the podcast my favourite sings. Rather than dissing what Broadway's rewarding, I'll give a listen to Goldsmith and Gordon. They'll dissect musicals, arrows and slings. Here on the podcast my favourite sings. When the show bites, when the rhymes suck, when the crafts regressed, I go to the podcast my favourite sings, where David and Paul know best.
Hello.
Paulie,
Hello, David.
is it really you?
No, I'm entirely someone else, but I'm faking being me today. So you'll have to just put up with that.
It's a brilliant AI rendition of Paul Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of prompts to get to where I am to make it feel authentic and natural. But,
So how many bottles of water do you think it costs to create the AI Paul Gordon?
David, that's a dark road you're going down.
Let's not go there. You're right. You're really,
Um,
really right.
so how are you?
Paul, I'm really good. Brianna is off to concertize in Pittsburgh this weekend, and I'm going to go see the kids, the grandkid, and I'm very excited about that. Sun is out. It's a beautiful Saturday morning when we're recording this.
Um, and have you been working on anything in the last few days? Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yes, of course, many things, and we'll get to all of that on this episode of My Favorite Sings. But first, Paul, how are you?
I'm well, David. Thank you for asking.
You look good.
Usually I look at thank you because what was the Saturday Night Live line? It's not about feeling good, it's about looking good.
It's an old Billy Crystal thing.
Was
Anyway,
it Billy
Paul,
Crystal?
yeah, I would rather look good than feel good. It's better to look good than to feel good.
Can we do an episode on just Billy Crystal? Because I love him.
No. So, Paul, the big
Yes.
news, first of all, the big news is as we're recording this, this is episode 6.
Wow, it feels like episode 200, but yes,
I
continue.
know, I know. But we only have just launched the podcast as of this week. And already, Paul, the accolades are pouring in. The viewership is going through the roof.
Do we have do we have 12 views yet? Have we
uh
reached 12 views?
gosh, I'm
That's the magic number I'm hoping for.
yeah, I think we've Paul, I don't want to blow your mind, but I think we may have doubled it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
That puts a little more pressure.
I
Okay.
know. No, I get just breathe. Just breathe.
All right.
Um, so I did get some notes
On our lives.
on our podcast, and I thought maybe we could start by sharing them.
Okay. I don't do notes, but sure, go ahead.
I know I've worked with you. Um, so first of all, Brianna listened to the podcast first. Now tell our listeners who don't know who Brianna is.
I'm not going to tell our viewers who your wife is because I won't do her justice. So why don't you tell the viewers who
Oh no,
your
no.
wife is?
I won't do her justice. It's much better coming from an objective third party. Who's Brianna?
Well, Donna is one of my closest friends who I love, who always, she grounds me a bit. And I love talking about theater with her and about life with her. And she's wonderful. That's who Brianna is.
Well, Very much the same for me, although I am also married to her. She's Broadway's Brianna Murray, and one of the most brilliant performers I've ever seen. I was actually compiling a list of my top 10 um, most indelible musical theater performances of all time, which would be an interesting segment for us to do, actually, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I don't really remember most of the musical
Sure. But
performances
that would
in
make
my life.
what you did remember even more
Sure.
impressive.
Yeah. I'll have to think back, David. A lot of years. But continue.
Yeah, I was reminded of that because Donna Murphy just posted that it's been 30 years since she did Passion, and her Fosca in Passion is on the
Hang
list.
hang on. The point of this
Oh no,
podcast
no, I
is
know.
not to make us feel old. So
Oh,
I
oh,
just want
oh,
to
oh.
remind you of that. All right. We're
Sure.
not going back 30 years.
Oh,
We're we're not doing it, David. Those are the rules. Now
oh,
can
got it. Okay, so Passion, what was that?
I don't know.
I wasn't
Uh,
even born. Oh my God,
you know.
how boring. Um, So yeah, and I'm going on a couple tangents here. And Brianna is on that list. Her Mrs. Love is on my list.
Right. But you've already like sort of gotten to a different
I know.
subject. We're
I know.
going to notes. So let's go back there.
So her note was she really enjoyed the podcast. She thought I was too bossy.
I agree.
And third thing was she thought you guys have to have segments. You have to have, like when Brie and I did our podcast during the pandemic, we had, we had like weekly, like this week in gaggery was a segment, and we would do a little this week in gaggery and with a horn, and then we would talk about the things in the news or in media or in social, or in culture that were a gag to
Mhm.
us. We had
Yeah.
and we had call in, call out, call in, which was at the time we were in a social justice era and we were talking about, yeah, that's all gone. We were talking about, people we wanted to, or situations we wanted to not call people out, but we wanted to call them in. And that, like, those were segments. So I thought that would be I thought, an interesting note. Like we sort of do like the whole thing is one segment, but maybe we could segmentize within the segments. And I thought it might be interesting if you agree with that note, which I know you don't really take notes, but if you agreed with that note, we could actually work that out, you know, right now during the podcast.
Is
Um,
that the or are there other notes? Because I have a few notes.
yeah, we can go back. So those are Brianna's notes, and then I got notes from Maddie.
Your daughter.
Thank you for telling our listeners. So my daughter is Madeline Garner Goldsmith. She is now, as of this week, just parenthetically, also, I'm going to give a shout out. This is the week that her book, actually her second book, and third, if you count the play we wrote together, that's published by Dramatist Play Service, but her book came out this week. Her kind of big children's book, not children's book. It's an adult book for children. Anyway, it's a book about grief and loss after a miscarriage, but it's told in a comforting sort of child storytelling way, with incredible illustration or design by one of the foremost designers um, in uh, in that world, and it's called "Your Baby Will Find You." And it's this published this week on Ben Bella Books. So go get your copy. It's going to be an incredible gift for people and for you to read. I can't get through it without weeping, and not just because she's my daughter, but she had notes and really liked the podcast. Like, she liked it more than Brie, which surprised me because, well, they're both really critical, Paul, and very, very critical, significant women in my life, which is
Well, let's hear the note.
it's a gift.
'Cause we've had the introduction to the note, so let's hear the note.
I do go on. Her note was, yeah, she loved the podcast. Uh, she hates the title, hates it. She thinks,
Oh, I love her.
yeah,
Thank
I
you.
know. Oh, but I have bad news for you because Brianna loves the title. So, what are we gonna do? It's gonna be one of those things. But anyway, she doesn't like the title. She thinks it should be She thinks she agrees that segments would be a good idea, but she thinks we could call it. She had a suggestion, which was she really liked the three questions very much. Does it sing? Do I care? Why this show? Why now? She loves that, but she thought the podcast would be called "Does It Sing?" with David Goldsmith and Paul Gordon. Um,
That's way better. That's way better.
so you like that? So that could happen. I'm not, like I'm not
Do you want to
intractable.
hear my, do you want to hear my note?
And now let's hear yours.
My note is I'm very bored with the first part of this podcast.
Sure.
Um, I I think that these notes are fine, but I would like to just say that just you and I talking and rambling
Yeah.
could be amusing. You know, I like my podcast. I listen to a podcast called The Watch, where they talk about TV, and I love these two guys, and I would mention their names if I could remember them. Um, but you know, they do a little bit of segments. They'll talk about Severance. They'll talk about the studio, so forth. And sure, we could do that. But my biggest note is let's start talking about musicals.
Oh my God. That's an idea. Wait a
You know
minute.
what?
It's almost like
Um,
our podcast is about that. So,
right. But,
do you have a
but
musical
what
in
I
mind you want to talk about, or a song in mind that you want to talk about?
You
Is
know, what I feel like talking about this week, and I think the form of this is very nebulous, which I like,
Yeah,
because we can really talk about anything that has to do with musical theater. And this week I'd like to talk about what we're working on and
great.
some of the shows that we're excited about in our canon and others, and also sort of musical theater development. And I think it would be a good idea to speak to new writers and also our peers on some of the things that we've been up to that I think are really exciting, that I think could be helpful to the 12 listening to this podcast
I think it's
if one
20.
or
I think
two
it's
of them
24. I think it's 24.
okay, happen to write musicals or be interested in write musicals.
Yeah,
And of course, one of the things is that, that I've been doing for a while has been filming my shows, filming my musicals, sometimes filming them without an audience, and sometimes filming a production. And but as the world has progressed in the last several years, even that has become very expensive to do. So David and we have
that's
formed a
me.
company, that's you, called Virtual Stay Up, where we're focused on filming shows affordably and developing shows this way. And one of the things that interests me about this model in terms of the writing of musicals is that it's very challenging right now to be in a situation where you can create a musical and do any kind of presentation of it, be it a 29-hour reading or a lab or whatever forms, for anything that the average person could afford without a sponsor, a producer already in place. But most of us, as we develop shows, don't have those people. We're trying to reach those people. So that becomes the challenge. And I find that what we're doing right now in filming shows in development, not filming shows that are done. Here it is, we're ready for Broadway, although some of them might be. We're ready to have other creative people look at these shows, potentially directors, producers, people that can further the work, and people that can give us notes, even though we've established I don't care for notes, but say, this is great. What about this scene's not working for me? This character's not working for me. Maybe the song isn't working for me. And what I'd like to talk about for a few minutes is it's a very different development process than what we have experienced in the past as writers of the theater, within the structure of the musical theater community, what they're offering right now. and how I think we're being very innovative and taking a different approach. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about how this development process, and obviously we've only done two shows in in this in this process for ourselves recently. And I want to know what your experience has been as a writer, because we'll also tell our audience that you directed one of them and did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
But I'm more interested in your experience as a writer.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for bringing up Virtual Stage Lab. Um, and maybe we can have one segment called Shameless Plugs, and we just plug our shit for like 10 minutes.
Oh no, every show is going to be shameless plugs, but
Okay.
continue.
Maybe I'll title this episode Shameless Plugs. We've done three. You've done your show, Ribbit. And then I did my show with John Kavanaugh and Wendy Perlman, Five Women in an Airport. Then we did our show together, My Improbable Sisters. And before I launch into the answer to your question, I just want to say the other big news, other than we launched our podcast this week, was we started to focus more of a launch now on My Improbable Sisters this past week or two. Certainly in light of the one of our two stars being nominated for a Tony Award, Jasmine Amy Rogers, and that actually is seriously doing very well online. And we're very, very proud of Jasmine. We're very proud of Jenna Lee Rosen and the work that they did on our project, and also that they did it, and the way that they are navigating a very difficult career with so much class and grace. They're really just two of the most brilliant people we've ever met. And you should check out their work on the show because it's really beautiful. It's called My Improbable Sisters, if I didn't say that, but I'm old. I don't remember what I just said. In terms of as a writer, getting to see for, a very, as you say, minimal budget, your work up on a set, working with actors, reworking with actors, getting those scenes right. Now on the work we did together, as you said, I did direct it, so I was in a really actually very wonderful position because I got to actually make the cuts and changes and take the notes we did take and needed to take and immediately put them on the actors, and also from my perspective, as the co-dramaturg, if you will, and I hate the term dramaturg, but we're the writers of it. I was able to affect those notes immediately and see the results, and then we have them on film, and you know, getting to see the whole finished product and look at it over and over again. And when you consider that we did it, we were able to do it just contractually through the SAG union in the way that we did it, knowing that if we even had to go back after seeing the whole thing and realizing upon seeing it on film that we wanted to make certain changes, we wanted to cut some songs, we wanted to add some songs, some dialogue didn't work, some dialogue did work, some moments don't work, we needed to restructure, whatever it would still be less money to reshoot the entire thing again than it would be to go through a table read,
Another
29-hour workshop process. So it is absolutely something that it feels revelatory. It feels innovative in a way that is liberating, and surprisingly hopeful in a situation where, in an industry that is struggling more than ever in my lifetime. Now, granted, I'm barely a sapling of 25, but I've never seen this industry that I'm in struggle and be in such a state of constant ongoing attack. And this is a way, Virtual Stage Lab and this model that we're using and this infrastructure that we've built over the past couple of years to democratize the process of what gets seen, how it gets developed, how it gets put out there in the world for other producers, other theaters, and potential licensors. So yeah, it's been incredibly liberating and valuable.
because there is no support system
Correct.
for in our Broadway community. Let's just state that absolutely. Our Broadway community that has been really flourishing for a long time. Sometimes it's only two or three shows that are making the majority of the revenue for Broadway. But Broadway's in pretty decent shape for, several of the community members. And there seems to be no awareness of new work and struggling new writers and veteran writers like ourselves that don't have access to these funds to go through the process that is set up to create shows. And what I am feeling very strongly about is that work is suffering. The readings that I go to are suffering. The Broadway shows I go to are suffering creatively. There doesn't seem to be anything in place other than let's go to La Jolla and spend $2 million on our
Yeah,
show.
La Jolla, we love La Jolla. We love you
I
guys.
love La Jolla, but I'm not putting down La Jolla. I've worked in La Jolla. We developed Jane Eyre there. But I'm saying that the system of let's do an out of town and spend millions of dollars on development, that to me is because I've been through this experience, that often does not help the development of your show, because you're putting all your money into one huge production that if you do not get right, then you're in big trouble. And in our model, like, because it's structured around not spending huge amounts of money, but getting back probably as good or better results than doing an entire production out of town and spending several $1 million. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that our filmed musicals look like an out of town $3 million production. I'm saying that what we are focusing on is the writing and the storytelling and the music and the most important parts of a musical, whereas big budget out of town productions do focus on that, but they're focusing on so many other production elements that the writing tends to get lost, because we've had our 29-hour reading or we've had our lab. So now we think we're ready for this production, but you're not really. You're not quite there yet. And now you've taken such a big leap that that's why I think a lot of shows that come into New York are not ready, because they haven't been developed, or they've been overdeveloped in a crazy system where there are 1,000 cooks. And I think I'm really speaking now from my own personal experience, both good and bad, in how long I've been developing musicals within this system. And I find right now that what you and I are doing, David, that how we are filming these shows for not very much money, and we have the opportunity to look at our show and go, oh my God, it's like, I think a lot of it is there, but some of it is not. And then we can still keep going and develop shows without having spent this great amount of money. So when that money is finally invested in the work, it goes to the work and it goes to the elements that need it at that moment.
Yeah, I guess really what we should do is we're going to talk about Virtual Stage Lab. We should just kind of let our 25 listeners know what it is. And I just want to say, interestingly, in our situation, the three musicals that we've been a part of so far that are on the platform, turns out when we filmed them, they were actually all in pretty good shape. I mean, I think any living writers who would have productions and they would go from even from Broadway to a tour, because I know with Motown, like from Broadway to the tour, we made changes. Everything that was on the tour was not as it was seen on Broadway. And I think that's, you get a chance to see it, you get a chance to live with it, you get, and you'll make some changes. But structurally, Ribbit, Five Women in an Airport, and My Improbable Sisters are all kind of solid. I mean, they came out pretty well. And the project that Danny Davis, the producer director, brought to us, Grief Dialogues, it's on the platform right now, also came to us in a high state of development, and is already, in fact, being licensed and performed everywhere. Your project Ribbit just recently got licensed. So there's a proof of concept for what Virtual Stage Lab is doing. And I think so it's worth just having this moment, if we're taking it, to talk about what it is, why it is, how it started. You and I are founding this project off of desperation, and not desperation, but a frustration that you and I both had that really was your brainchild when you went and found a way of doing a model that could produce um, complete film captures of shows for a fraction of what it would normally cost under the SAG after micro budget.
Yeah. And just interject why and the
Yes,
exact moment where this
great.
was triggered. I had a show off Broadway, but before the show, we did a lab. And labs are very expensive in New York. They could be $100,000 or a couple of $100,000. And I'm going to say that this lab did get from A to B. I did the lab, and then we did have the off-Broadway production. But I'm going to say personally, I did not care for this lab. I felt like this was not a good presentation of the work, and that we spent so much money on something that wasn't quite even ready, I think, to be at that stage was really revelatory to me, because that was the moment I went, I can't do this. This doesn't make any sense. This wasn't even ready to do this, but this is the way the business is structured. So I really just searched all of the contracts.
You really did.
I really just did. And then I discovered a contract I'd never seen before. And then we figured out a model to work around it. And I don't want to get into too much detail about it. But as much as I just want to say generally that the idea that I had, and then once we manifested and created these shows based on this idea, it it worked so much better than I had ever envisioned. And the last thing I want to say, because I know you have something you want to jump in
Oh, sure.
on, is that surprisingly, the three shows we've happened to film, or the four, were were were, were much more ready to be filmed than we even knew at the time. Like My Improbable Sisters, just for me, My Improbable Sisters and Ribbit, I don't want to make a lot of changes in those
Yep.
shows.
And you don't need
And
to.
here's the other, we had never done a reading
Yep.
or any
I
of
know.
this.
I know.
So we didn't nothing. So it was like, I wonder if this works. And if it didn't work, or
Yes.
parts of it didn't work, that would be okay,
Yes.
because we didn't spend $2 million.
Right.
We spent
Or
20,
even $50,000.
or even 50,000 or $40,000. Right. Which is probably, 20 to 30 to 40 what these can come in at, and to have an entire, what we're calling a visual demo
Yes.
of your musical that is going to be so much more watchable than a 29-hour reading or a lab. And there's so many reasons why. We don't have to get into those reasons now, because I think we're going to be talking about this model as we do these
Sure.
podcasts.
Sure.
But my main question that I think you answered was your experience as a writer, because we are writers, and we're speaking to a broad audience of 12 or 24 people,
Yeah.
but also some of those people that we're speaking to, hopefully, are people that are interested in writing shows and developing shows, and our peers that are currently writing shows.
Yeah.
And I think my mission personally is just to have the quality of musicals rise up.
Yeah.
And if we can be participate in lifting up our community in terms of development of musicals, and really focusing on storytelling, character, and music and lyrics, we are doing it right.
Well, we're doing a service, and it's also a self-interested service, not just, professionally, but also because we want to sit in theaters and have great experiences. We don't want to sit there and want to gouge our
Which
eyes
I'm
out.
not. And I'm just going to say it, and we're not going to be specific, and we know what we know. And I'm just not having a good time in most of the musicals that I'm seeing. I'm not, and
I
I haven't had time in the last many years.
It's hard. I want to if I may, just since you brought it up, I want to just candidly, if I may, go back to your shows that you cite as what prompted you to really, in that moment of darkness, find some light. Because I was at that lab
Oh,
uh,
right. Yeah.
of that show, and I don't, and I think the show is so good now. Like I think the show you ended up putting up off Broadway was wonderful, really wonderful.
What's the name of that show?
That show is called The Gospel According to Heather, and the songs are. It is a collection of glittering songs, catchy, fun, infectious, smart, beautifully, beautifully arranged, beautifully performed. I'm a big, big fan of the Gospel According to Heather, and I'm a fan of the book, and I think you worked out so much between the lab and the production itself, which really only came, I think, a year later. So that was quite something. And I mean, I think also a testament to your producing team and the people that stuck with you. Because I will agree with you. The where it came from the lab, which I did not enjoy, to the final production, which I did, there is because look, because you're good at your job, because Rachel was good at her job, Rachel Klein, the director, you had a very good cast. You had the process that worked in the way it should have worked because you went from something that was not working to something that worked, period. And the difference is that you spent probably three times the money to get there
Yeah.
that you needed to
Yeah.
spend. And
Yeah.
that's the only difference because had you filmed the workshop that didn't work, you would have already been ahead because you would have spent a fraction of the money to look at it, and you would have been able to look at it like a football team looks at their game video after the game, and you could actually chart. Okay, at this point, you broke here, and you should have broken here, and you didn't see. It's the same thing. You can watch this video. We watch these videos. You edit them. I'm going to start editing them. We watch them over and over and over again, and you really get to see. Okay, here's where it falls apart. Here's where the
Yeah.
structure is off. Here's where this
Yeah.
song isn't good enough because you're feeling it when you're watching it, and you've only spent a third of what you would have spent. You could literally go back and film the entire thing again and do it all over again, but you probably won't need to because you'll know what works and what doesn't. And I think that's big, and that's very different from Ribbit, which weirdly worked. Like you put it on and I was like, oh, you haven't, like you said, you haven't workshopped this anywhere. You didn't do a reading of this. I was crazy. I was like, and I was in that. You put me in that.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, you were.
um,
And and it and that's a great point because sometimes, and I think because we've been doing this so long and we think, and I don't really know why, but sometimes we can get a first draft or a second draft and get it pretty close. But I look back on the Gospel According to Heather, and of course I didn't have this idea then, so we couldn't have done it. But I look back on it now and I wonder, had we filmed it first instead of that lab, I would have seen, oh, I obviously need to fix these two or three things that I clearly knew I needed to fix. I would have fixed them. Then I would have liked to filmed it again
yeah,
and then go, how did this work? And then I would have caught the things that didn't work off Broadway. And there are only a few little things to
sure.
me that didn't work off Broadway, but I wish I would have caught them because even though they weren't massive, they were big enough that I would have made the show better. And so I think every show could go with the model of let's film it, let's see how it looks, let's see what it needs, let's fix it, and then let's film it again. And
Sure.
if I'm doing an off Broadway or a Broadway or a big regional, that's what I would do. And if I got it right the first time, I'd go, great, let's do our production. But if there's still changes to be made, I would film it again. and then see how it works. And then when you do your production, you're just tweaking. Then you're just in preview hearing audience and tweaking to an audience. And it's a much, much different process.
Yeah, and look, you're now talking about in an ideal situation where you have a financial infrastructure underneath you or around you, that could be a way of
Sure.
developing for big theaters that they're not doing now. But if you don't have that, you still can use the thing. And what we haven't mentioned is what we do with it, which is we just post it for free because you can only post in that contract for free. You can't post for money.
Right.
So you can renegotiate later if you're so fortunate. But you post it and then you get to have, there's a court of public opinion, there's views, there's social media, there's branding of the piece of property.
That is the most important thing, branding your show.
Yeah.
If like we were fortunate that our first films, the first time we shot these musicals, they came out good enough that, hey, we want to share them with the world. Because keep in mind, if you film your show, you do not have to put it on
Yeah,
YouTube.
you
You do
don't.
not have, because your show may not be ready yet. It may be you're just showing this to selective people for notes, such as our podcast. But once you film your show and then you're thinking, hey, this is in pretty good shape, even if it's not perfect yet, you are branding your show. And that's what you cannot do with a 29-hour reading or a lab or
You can't.
anything.
You can't. You can't. And I just want to then just go further to say, as a piece of film, I mean, My Improbable Sisters, so much of a confluence of unlikely lightning bolts hit around that project. As you recall, we actually had another show slotted in there that fell out
Yes. Yes.
because our lead creative had a death in the family. We had the entire thing ready to go. We had this infrastructure of that we had built over the course of that first year,
Yeah.
of a DP and stage managers, and we were kind of like, well, we've got a shoot coming up, but no show, and we thought, well, we
Right.
think My Improbable Sisters, which at the time was called First Night, we think it's ready to go. Why don't we just, put it up and see? And as you said, if it's bad, if it doesn't work yet, we'll know. And then, no harm done. We've learned what we've learned for less than the cost of development in a traditional development process. But a few things happened. One was the show was just on the level of just we worked on it for actually on and off for at least a couple of years, but it was in better shape than we thought it was. It got in better shape as we worked on it over the course of the shoot because we were there on the set, we were making changes, we did make significant changes in the
Yeah.
process of filming it because it is
I
still
don't
a rehearsal
think
process.
we didn't change anything with the music or lyrics, I don't think.
I think we maybe added a reprise or cut a reprise or no, we didn't. I'm thinking of some.
Oh, I
That's
think the
why women did
score
it.
is exactly the same. I don't know if you tweaked a lyric in rehearsal. I don't
I
recall that
probably
you
tweaked a
did.
few. Yeah, but then the other thing that happened, which makes it like, well, we have to put this online, was the chemistry and the performances. Not just, I mean, everyone in
Sure.
that cast was honestly incredible. And we had actors fall out because it was, the SAG micro budget, and we had to bring in new actors in. Everyone gelled as this family of women and their significant others in this thing. But what was lightning in a bottle for sure was the chemistry between Jasmine and Jenna Lee Rosen. And
Yeah.
and I mean, when I was like watching this being filmed, I was like, this doesn't happen, what I'm seeing here and what these women are doing with these roles. This is like, so we got so lucky. We really, I mean, I don't even know how it happened. I mean, I do know how it happened, but it happened. And so I was so proud to post and to start posting about My Improbable Sisters. It was like the literal opposite of, well, we have to go back to the drawing board and look at our game footage. This was like, no, put this on Netflix. I'm ready. I am ready.
Yeah.
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 Um, so that all being said, and I don't know how into the weeds you want to go, but I think look, this really sprang out of your your indomitable will and imagination and willingness to honestly, you know, we're men of a certain age, and you are very good at not staying stuck in old ways of thinking. You really are. And this was one of them. And I think you also are a decent human being and a good person. So you're thinking, how can we, yeah. And but I think for for our 25 listeners, many of whom may be writers, how did you get like actors of the caliber of Jasmine Amy Rogers and Jenna Lee Rosen in your other show, Kate Rockwell, Brianna Marie, Kaylin Fu, Katie Garrity, Elena Shadow? How did you get these people to join you? And this really, I mean, first of all, I think they have to. We talk about this, Brie and I, on our podcast series, because she's an actress, of course. So it's the people, the part, and the pay. Those are the three reasons that an actor will do a show. So the people were us, uh, and whoever else decided to stay on. The part was really important because I think everyone felt like there was something worth showing up and doing the work about. And then the pay, which there was none. Like really, there was no pay. So how do we? And the rule is you have to have two out of three, or you say no. But in terms of the third one, what I think you just we never had a conversation where you hadn't already thought about how do we reimburse, how do we make the actors at least acknowledge what they've done.
I want to jump in there really quick because where I don't want to get into the weeds of specifically,
Sure.
behind the scenes of VSL, I want to say that profit sharing has always been something that our industry has lacked. The fact that actors can be in a hit Broadway show for a year and a half, or
And they've
however
developed
long,
it and they've originated the
and
roles.
and then, they're making money on Broadway. And then a year later, it's like, how do I make a living? And I feel that one of the things that we are specifically doing that we haven't mentioned yet is we are profit sharing in our shows. I'm not going to get into the numbers,
Right.
but it's generous and it's
That's what I
real.
wanted to say. And that's what I wanted to say. I didn't, and I thank you so much because perfectly, I didn't want to get into the weeds, but I also didn't want to not mention. And
Yes,
it is the term is profit sharing. And
yes.
and it is a shame that I think it's one of those things we will need to look back on what has happened with, I think of two huge shows over the last 50 years that the actors who created those roles, who those roles were built upon, and who were performing them for years, that those actors had to fight as hard as they had to fight to participate in the success of those shows is something that is we need to look back on that as like the sweatshop labor days pre-union, when you had 6-year-olds in the mill. We can't, it can't be okay. We can't normalize that. And I think whatever we do, those originators need to be acknowledged.
That's right. And since we have no control over the Broadway community and how broken it is and how they are not fixing it and seem to be unaware that it needs fixing, what we can do is incorporate this idea in our shows that we do have control over. We have control over the model that we've created. And it's so important to me, and I know it's important to you, that we share. In other words, in our shows right now, just to make a blanket statement, if our actors or our production team do not make money, it's because we haven't made money. If we make money, they're going to make money. And that's the way it should be. And we're all taking a risk. We obviously have been developing these shows over the years. It's our show, so we get a little bigger chunk. But we are being generous, I think, with how we are sharing these profits. And we also have a system in place that should the show go to Broadway, go to the West End, that we have figured that out as well, how to incorporate, lead producers coming on board and how that all works. So whereas I'm really happy with what we're creating and what we're doing, I'm just hoping that what we're doing, what some other people are doing, can break through to the Broadway community and they can hear us and see us and see that it's really important that we make these changes for the people in the community that are not millionaires, that have not had 5 hit shows, that have not produced 5 hit musicals, that are not, the few writers that are writing a lot of the shows that are doing really well. It's really everybody else that we're concerned with, and that we should be concerned with, because we have a thriving, vibrant, creative community of actors, directors, designers, writers, composers, lyricists that are struggling to find work, that need to find work. And I think what we're doing, not to be too lofty, is creating a model where we can work. Because honestly, as a veteran writer, all I want to do is work. All I want to do is write shows with you. All I want to do is have our shows on stage or film our shows. I love film. That is a medium I am very excited about. So creating musicals that are on film, that could also serve as licensing vehicles, is incredible.
And I want to just, you bring, I'm sorry. But you also bring up a point which I think is important for people to envision when they're thinking about what a virtual stage lab production is that they are not designed to look like movies. They are filmed captures of stage productions. They have
hybrid.
They have visible mics. Everyone knows we're on a stage. There's no audience. It's all just for the camera, as you say, for the storytelling, the music, and the performances. And it's intentional.
That's all you need.
Yeah, it's intentional, scrappy look. And I want to go back because I want to say all of that you talked about in terms of profit sharing is all embedded in the infrastructure of VSL, along with the stable of directors, writers, filmmakers, editors. But yeah, that whole infrastructure has been developed over the course of the past 2 years, and with these projects, and contractually all worked out. And also, we now need to give a shout out to our marketing director, Melody Munitz, who is also featured as an incredible actress in my Improbable Sisters, and is on the road right now as Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family Tour, which I went to see. She's fucking fantastic in it. She can do anything. This woman is she's spoken to the freaking UN as a scientist. Okay?
I did that once, but I was
not as impressive. I saw a clip of Melody. I didn't see this clip of you.
What I was talking about.
It's Sean, okay. Patrick, thank you both. Well, we're kind of getting near the end.
I want to end with something Stephanie and I were talking about last night.
Now, who is Stephanie, Paul?
Stephanie's my lovely wife.
Oh, yeah. She is lovely.
She's lovely. So, Stephanie and I were talking about Me and You.
I'm a big Stephanie fan, by the way. I hope you know that.
Me too.
Brianna and I were basically, it was like we were Stephanie fans, and then we were like, should we put up with Paul? Well, we really like Stephanie, and the rest is history.
That's the only reason I got married, because, so that there'd be at least one person within my tribe that people would enjoy.
Same.
So we were talking about, how, as writers, how compatible we are. And yet, you grew up to Gilbert and Sullivan, and I grew up to the Beatles, right?
It was more Sondheim and Rodgers and Hammerstein, but yes, there was.
But I would also say opera. You grew up at a love of opera, and Gilbert and Sullivan, were sort of sort of formed partly who you are as a writer and composer.
For sure.
And, me, it was like the Beatles and Paul Simon and so forth. And of course, now we both have appreciation of those genres, except I don't like opera. But I think that's kind of what makes our writing partnership unique, is that it is a very specific opposite backgrounds of what we grew up to, even though we both, grew up to golden age musicals, and I had a love of them growing up because my parents played them. But I grew up to pop music, and you grew up to opera and musical theater, and how we've merged those two worlds, I think, has been really interesting for us as writers. And of course, the point of this podcast is to talk about ourselves
Oh
and
my
to talk
God, I
about how,
didn't realize that until episode 6. It really took me a while.
no, it's about how cool we are.
Oh,
And,
God, yes.
just like, and other people should think we're cool.
And now they'll think we're cool because we're telling them how cool we are.
Yeah, because that's the way you get cool is by telling people you are.
You are an expert on human nature, my
And so
friend.
that otherwise, otherwise, how would they know?
It's a really, really fine
That's
point.
what I'm saying. All right.
Yeah, so you are the
Till now.
you're the Eddie Murphy to my Dan Aykroyd. You are the Will Smith to my Kevin James. I'm just giving you the cool one. You're the cool one. I'm
I,
the opera
as
guy.
long as I'm not as long as I'm not the Sonny to your Cher, I think I'm okay.
No, definitely
I
we
don't
do
even know
not
where
have a Sonny and Cher relationship. That is definitely not the case.
and you
Most
know what? Sonny was not great. I'm just saying.
And he was even
Sonny,
worse to Cher.
not great.
And even worse to Cher.
It well that I don't know, but I know he was not great.
I don't
So,
know. All I know is he had a tree on a ski slope with his name on it. That's all I know.
dude, you did not need to go there, but I'm
Look, karma is what it is. I'm not in control of karma. It just is what it is. Paul, I gotta say, every week it's a pleasure.
and I got to say every week it just keeps going down and down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a trial.
we'll see what happens.
Um,
Um,
think
what
about
do you got?
segments this week. I think we could do some segmenting next week. Think about that.
No, I like the free form,
Sure.
but maybe when we're up to 30 views, I would like to hear those notes.
See, you like the free form. You're the you know what you are? You're the John Lennon to my Paul McCartney. How about that?
There you go. Although Paul is cuter,
That's
has
really not
better
fair.
voice, but John was deeper. I don't know. I could go either way,
That's the thing. Sometimes I'm the John Lennon to your Paul McCartney, and that's really what matters.
but sometimes I want to be George Martin.
Yeah, that's true. And sometimes we're like neither of those people or any of them.
Sometimes I'm Ringo, who is also very cool, but he would write Octopus's Garden,
You
which,
have been Ringo, and I've been Pete Best, and it's really
oh,
yeah.
okay, well, there you topped me.
Oh, well, and with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode of my favorites.
And good night and good luck.
Ooh, that's a whole topic for next week too.
David, we don't have a sign out.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm saying. We need a little.
We got to have a clever sign out.
Well, here,
And
basically, we've just been saying "I love you" at the end of every podcast, which is sweet, but it's not really a sign off.
I'm not sure how much I love you right now, so
I
I'm
know
not sure.
you never are.
Authentic-
I'm always the one. I'm always the one proffering the love, and you're always the one kind of like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not good with feelings. So I'll try to integrate that into my personality for next time and see
Sure.
how it goes.
That'd be great, or not.
All right. Listen, I don't love you, but I like you.
You don't have to go, but you can't stay here. I don't know. Let's wait.
I don't have a comeback for that. I felt funnier today, and then it just didn't happen, which I apologize.
Paul, I thought you were really, really funny looking. I
No.
thought it went great. I was really happy.
So here's what I would like to review this episode
As
right
we're
now.
doing it. Yeah, that's
Quick review.
how did you feel?
I liked you. I thought you went on a little too long at the beginning, but then you became aware that you were
Sure.
going on.
That's
So
how
I
it
thought
works.
that was okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't think I had it today. Although I think I look pretty good. So that's not nothing.
Well, hopefully everyone's watching this on YouTube or Spotify, where you can now watch on video. Hopefully, but yeah, Paul, listen, you were funny, you were charming. Like it was the shameless plugging of it all that I think really brought it out of you. I just think really that
So,
shine.
so I think you could use some work in no, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was on the edge of my seat. I really wanted to know how I could improve.
Before we sign out, what was the last thing you and Bree streamed that you were watching?
Well, we've been uh watching every episode of, gosh, you just really blew my mind because I've been watching Andor by myself because she's not that interested in it. But we have been watching, gosh, Paul, what is it?
Well, of course, I'm watching Andor. Are you watching The Pit, Adolescence? That's what the studio.
Well, The
Um,
Studio we love, Adolescence we loved. We have not started watching The Pit. We do want to watch The Pit. Um, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed because we literally like did. Oh, and the season ended. The Righteous Gemstones ended.
right. You love that show. I did try watching that, and then they had a shock ending, and I don't
Oh, you
like
hate that.
shock TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was good and funny. Steph and I watched Spider-Man Homecoming last night,
Yeah.
and I have to say, um, it is one of the best Marvel movies. I was blown away how good, and I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. So funny, so good. That little golden age of Marvel, right in that sweet spot. So yeah,
So,
that's
Paul, I
what
would
we
say
want.
that this part of the podcast is probably my least enjoyable right here. This
See,
part.
this is my favorite part because, I love talking about TV because I don't do TV. I don't write TV. I just watch it. So it's so enjoyable because it's not what I do.
Right.
And I love
Right.
to talk about
We
it.
should probably do a separate podcast about TV or do the thing where we don't do that and we
No,
just go through when we did.
let's do the thing where we don't do that, but possibly we talk about TV at the end of every podcast. Or I will. And you can go, this is a musical theater podcast. Why are you talking about television? Because I like television.
So it's like
That's
a
why.
it's like a bookend. On one end is my favorite sings, and on the which you hate, and on the end of the other end is talking about TV on a musical theater podcast, which I hate. And
Yeah.
then it's like the balance, it's the circle of life.
Thing that I think you fail to recognize about this podcast is it just gives me the opportunity to talk about any fucking thing I want to. So I'm just going to ramble on about anything that comes into my brain, which is why I should never be on a podcast.
Paul, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Know that.
Thank you for the love. I'm out of here.
Love you, Paul.
Like you, David.
Bye. My Favorite Sings with David Goldsmith and Paul Gordon is a production of Virtual Stage Lab. Virtual Stage Lab was founded to create film captures of original musicals and plays to democratize how theater gets developed, seen, produced, and licensed for production. If you have a favorite sing from a musical that you'd like to have David and Paul discuss, break down, and analyze, please contact our Director of Marketing, Melody Munitz, at virtualstagelab@gmail.com. For more information and our catalog of original projects by Paul Gordon and David Goldsmith and others, go to www.virtualstagelab.com. Main title parody lyrics written and performed by David Goldsmith. End title music by Paul Gordon from the Gordon and Goldsmith musical My Improbable Sisters, starring Jenna Lee Rosen and Tony Award nominee Jasmine Amy Rogers, now available to stream for free on the Virtual Stage Lab page on YouTube. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, comment, and share on social media. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the community. This has been My Favorite Sings, a practically perfect, not at all corny title. Title under protest by Paul Gordon.